First of all, thank you so much for coming here and helping me with my idea. What I want is to have a conversation about the design of lessons. And I think I've become particularly fascinated with mathematics lessons because it's my weakest point and always was. But the reason that I've got all the three of you together is because I detect, having been in your classrooms, really careful design of knowledge. So that's what I want to ask you about, not necessarily the mathematics, or you might need to refer to it to explain what it is you do. But I want to get to and ask you to tell stories about your classrooms to illuminate to me how you think about designing classrooms. Does that make sense? So the first question I have is this. I've already given this one to Di, which is this.
I can't remember.
It's okay. I'm going to start with an English analogy. There's this, when you talk to poets, they tell you that they don't start with an idea, they start with a sound. That's the thing. They hear things first, and they, like T.S. Eliot apparently wrote down little snippets of sounds, almost like a musician, and then they put it together, and then the ideas come through there. But if you talk to a novelist, they'll say, I started with a character, or if you're Tim Winton, a setting. And then if you talk to visual artists, they'll say, I started with a colour or a place. So my question to you is, when you sit down to plan for, because to my mind, teachers are a kind of artist, when you sit down to plan something, to plan a lesson, what do you start with? Do you start with the kids? Do you start with an idea? Do you start with an activity? How does that happen? All right. You first, Alice. Alice teaches kindergarten, and I love the way you teach mathematics to kindergarten.
Okay, I think generally I maybe start with the students, because in kindy we need to really keep track of where they're up to because they change so quickly over time. So we regularly work out which concepts they've mastered and which ones they're still working towards, and then kind of look at, say if we're doing addition, like what might be the next step then for us to cover with addition, and then start to think about, okay, so then what sort of problems might I ask them that then might draw out that idea, that strategy.
It's interesting you say that, because we've just been talking about that in the senior school. You said, what problem do I give them?
Okay.
Yeah. Rather than here's the problem and the solution, what do I give them so that they'll start engaging?
Yeah. Want them to try and figure it out for themselves. Yeah.
What about you, Val?
I think I tend to start, because we've got a program that we've got to stick to. I kind of look at the topic, but then I look at the students, and it's kind of at the same time. You look at the students in your class, and from that I decide on what strategies I'll use that'll best suit my students.
I suppose in the senior school we don't have the freedom of let's give them this problem and let's go with it, although more and more we're thinking about engaging them in that way. We would do both
at the same time.
Yeah, because I have a Year 8 class at the moment where they're kids who need maybe a little bit more context. Like I did area with them, and I could go in and just teach them the formulas, but I thought we'd turn it around and maybe paint the classroom.
Yeah, right.
That was interesting. It wasn't, wholly successful, but it was interesting that I watched them work and watched them communicate and watch them try and figure out how they're going to do this thing, because hey, that wall is not a perfect rectangle, it's got kinks in it, and do we have to paint this side of it as well? And so it creates this discussion and this problem solving aspect of things, even though I'm trying to teach area. And I'll try to do it through that, whereas the current topic, they're struggling with that. So because it's a different topic again, to bring them on board, they have to understand and grasp the concepts before they can actually go and do a problem. So different again.
To build a bit of confidence as well. I think you need to start with something that they're familiar with, and then build on that.
So do I hear you saying, like, you're doing a bit of chalking up before you have a lesson where you put them in a position where they have to, say, solve a problem? And also the thing I heard you saying was that you've got your students on the one hand, and then you've got the thing that you need to do, programs, as you say, in the senior school, or if you're in the junior school or in kindy, then there's addition. There's certain skills you have to teach them, but those two things are in tension. Do you think that's, like, that, is that where the creativity happens? having the students on the one hand and the thing you need to teach them on the other.
Yeah, I think so. Very much so. Yeah, and it depends on the group of kids. You're not going to teach the same thing the same way to another set of kids.
Right.
You've got to think about how best they might come on board with the topic first of all. So you've got to make something hard look easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I've seen more of Val's lessons and Alice's lessons than yours, Di, but the one thing I've seen that both of you do is games.
Yeah.
You use games and the kids get totally lost in it. That was what I saw in both your lessons. Can you talk to that, about how you think about using games?
I guess it's whenever possible, but some things, it's normally maybe an activity to kind of consolidate what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be something, it's like a dominoes game where expanding and factorising to match them up, or it might be a card matching game.
Right.
Or there's, for example, simultaneous equations, there's a solution given to them and they have to put it in the correct order. So things like that, but I tend to use them more as a consolidation of a concept.
Okay.
The idea of games.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think in kindy they just need such a like a base of understanding and number sense first, that I use a lot of games to just reinforce. I mean, we're doing the numbers to 20 and we need to do them a lot of different times before they retain them. So I guess games are to like vary the activities you're doing, and it's still with numbers to 20, but we're mixing it up and making it interesting still for them and engaging. So you might go out in the playground and draw some big numbers on the ground and you've got to run to the number that's before 5 or after 6 or something like that. Whereas
I want to go back to kindy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds really simple, but they seem to find it fun. And then the other way we use games is maybe if we're trying something new, but there might be a game to do with something that they need to remember in order to do that new idea. So maybe if we're revising our Friends of 10, we might play a game with Friends of 10, but then we might use that knowledge to then try a new idea with them. So it might be a warm-up to then lead into something else that's new.
That's similar to what you're saying, isn't it, Val?
Yeah. Consolidate and review.
I should get my next question. Hang on, I gotta wake my phone up. Oh yeah, this is a question close to my heart. So when I was at school, this is how my maths lessons went, which is possibly why I am, why I need Trish next door to me, which goes something like this. My maths teacher would put up a problem and then do the problem and then say, open your textbook on page 70. There's 10 questions like this one, now do it. Does that make sense? So it was more mimic my thinking rather than do mathematical thinking. So my question is, in your view, how do you design lessons? Now I've got to wake my phone up again. How do you design lessons so that students are behaving as mathematicians and not mimicking you? How do you do that?
I think whenever possible, I try to get students to discover things for themselves.
Yeah.
So it could be, like, for example, with Year 8 congruence, I got them to draw triangles and cut out different types of triangles and try to come up with the tests on their own.
Yeah.
And then another way is group work. I think when they're talking to each other and discovering things together, they're actually mathematicians, and explaining their ideas and explaining the way they solve a problem and comparing it to another method.
Right, and so when they're talking and comparing methods, they have to use mathematical language in order to agree on a way forward.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, right. What about you, Di?
Just remind me of the question again.
How do you design for learning, not mimicking?
Okay. A bit of self-discovery as well. Like I'm about to embark on teaching them about lines and decreasing lines and increasing lines. So there's this little game on that I've got, which is they have to drop the marbles, and marbles have to drop in a straight line. So they're going to, before I even introduce it, I'm going to get them in pairs to have a look at these slides that will move, but they have to adjust the number of the equation to be able to move the plank to roll these marbles.
Right.
So by doing that, I'm hoping that they're going to have a conversation between them as to which number they're changing and why they're changing it, because this is what happens when they change it. So they're talking mathematically, not maybe with the right vocab, but they are thinking mathematically because they've got to change this number to win the game.
Yes, I saw Eddie Wu do that. you made you play a game so that you were thinking mathematically before you knew the vocab for it.
That's right. So I'm not even going to say what we're doing. I'm just going to give them a lesson to play.
Yeah.
And then hopefully when we come back and I show them the line, they're going to be able to tell me, well, to make those marbles come down, then I'm going to start talking about slope of lines.
Yes, right.
So that's how I'm planning to do it. We'll see. I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted.
And I'd imagine that way of going into it decreases anxiety.
It's a hard concept
because I don't have
kids
to perform like my teacher. I'm just playing to work something out. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that they will work out how to change that line from a negative slope to a positive slope, and how those balls are going to fall. Is it going to be steeper, or is it going to be more, not as steep? So
that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you, Alice? You who starts with brand new kids, some of whom can't count to 10.
Yeah. I think it's just generally thinking about the problem you're going to give them and the questions then you're going to ask them, and how you would respond to maybe someone. So say for example, if we're doing paddle pop sticks and we're using those to make numbers, so we're looking at place value, and then I might say, can you make 23? And I might have one girl that puts out 23 ones and one that uses one bundle of 10 and 13 ones, and someone who does 2 bundles and 3 ones. So then just thinking, what question could I ask? Like, is there, who might have worked that out the fastest way? Talk to your partner about that.
Right.
And just getting them to discuss with someone else, a bit like what you were saying, like talking, pair sharing and using their own language to talk about which way might have been the most efficient way, but not necessarily having a right way and a wrong way.
But again, they're talking mathematically. They're talking about paddle pop sticks, but actually they're doing maths. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next question. We're whipping through them. Okay, so I have some favourite lessons, some of which, in English, some of which that have happened to me quite serendipitously. You know what I mean? Like sometimes kids can just stumble on something that you didn't plan for. Can you tell me your favourite lesson? It doesn't have to be a serendipitous lesson, it can be one you planned for, but which is your favourite lesson where you thought, yep, the kids were really learning today? That's a hard question.
It is a hard one. Cast my mind back.
Yeah.
I think maybe in year 4, I did some maths congresses with my girls, and they were given a problem on an A3 page and split into partners, and they needed to try and solve that problem, and then they did a rough draft and they had to put out a good copy, and everyone needed to walk around the room then with a post-it note and read other people's working and write notes on it. So if they had an improvement to make, they'd need to make a positive comment first and then write an improvement, or if they had questions about the other girls' methods. And it was really interesting because it was kind of really illuminating. I didn't realise that some of the girls in my class, which was the girls that were enrichment girls in maths, would add to work out the problem, like it was a multiplication problem, and I thought, oh wow, so I didn't realise your understanding was still at a repeated addition level, and it was just really surprising for me, and I thought I could have just jumped in and started just multiplying straight away and not even thought twice about that, but it kind of made me think, I need to go back a bit and just review this with particularly some of them did multiply, but it was just really interesting as a teacher because I thought, that was a bit eye-opening, and it wasn't what I expected to happen. So
it prompted some important reflection.
Yes.
Yeah. It can be humbling sometimes, can't it, teaching?
Yeah. And the girls even found it quite confronting when they came back to their posters and they saw the notes, and I think getting the feedback from their peers, they really took that on board a lot more than they would have feedback from me. So that when we did future congresses, they really, some of the girls who maybe hadn't set it out in the neatest, most logical way, they really upped their game in the later lessons because I think they knew, this is the feedback I had last time, I don't want to get that again. So
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you all saying that, like the talking mathematically. I wish I'd been in your classes. You're going to.
I think I love it when it probably happens more with the seniors because you build on these little concepts, seem isolated to them, when you're going through from 7 to 12. But you learn so much in year 9 in terms of the algebra. And then when they get to 11 and 12, and then you've got the graphs, and then you piece it all together. And I love it when, and it happens every time in year 12, when they said, oh my God, this is how it all comes together.
Right.
because it's interesting that I don't see it till then as to where the graph and the algebra and everything comes together to explain the real world.
Yeah.
And that's the lightning bolt moment for them, and that's probably the most exciting thing to see. It's, you know, a serendipitous moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with that about seniors. Yeah, it's nice when it all comes together.
Yes.
When it all comes together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That the faces change, don't they? It's amazing
when they have those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next question. What do you think is the relationship between planning and designing lessons and happenstance or random things happening, like your lesson where the students suddenly discovered that they were using addition and not times? What's the relationship between designing and what the kids do with it, I suppose?
That can be interesting.
Can't
Because
it
you
ever?
could design it thinking that it's going to go a particular way.
Right.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't.
No, it sometimes can just flop.
Yeah.
And then you've got to start to think about why. So it's a lot of self-reflecting when you do stuff like that. I think you design something for a particular purpose and then you stand back and watch them and you think, this is not working out. Or what is nice, that you design it in a way where you can move around. It's interesting what you learn about them, like the, you know, that addition thing, and you think, oh, gee, they still don't have that concept.
Right.
You know, whatever it might be that you're teaching.
Right. Yeah.
And I think sometimes their interjections as well make you think of questions that maybe you could have asked. Like I've had, even with putting out paddle pop sticks to represent numbers, I've had girls say, when I've said, oh, can you take out now 27 or something? And one might say, oh, I didn't have to put all mine back. I just took out this many more. And you go, oh, could have just, you know, given that extra challenge of, oh, I wonder if you could just stop and think first before you just go to put them all back.
Right.
And it's just that, like, the girl actually came up with my extension question. So, that I use that in future lessons, but I didn't think of it myself. It came from the girls.
Yeah.
When they tell you a different way of solving a question or something, it just prompts for more discussion, and it gets them thinking about a different way of solving the question or actually doing the problem. So I think that's important. Like it was something with completing the square, and normally you move the constant to the other side, that's step one, but then one kid will say, oh no, you can just add 2, and then it becomes straight away. So it's nice to have those moments where they kind of suggest something, and then I guess, like you were saying before, how when they listen to each other, when they speak to each other, they actually learn from that.
Right. And so do the kids, the students, when they see you responding to their questions, do you think the room can shift? Like, what am I trying to get at? When the students see you responding to their interjections by redesigning the lesson, you know, or by shifting the goalposts, or by taking their interjections seriously, does that change how they view themselves as students and as mathematicians?
I think it helps build their confidence.
Right.
And they feel like they've contributed something to the lesson, and what their opinion and their method, or that we value that.
Right. Rather
I
than
remember one year I had an accelerator class, and there was a question that a few of them struggled with. And so we divided the board, I think it was 3 or 4 spaces. You had 4 solutions to this one question. And they go, oh. And you said to them, and you say to them, I want you to write down the one that really resonates with you, or that you understand. And they're all different. They all achieve the same sort of problem solving, but I think they learn a whole lot more in seeing someone's solution and being able to tease it out and sometimes poo-poo the idea. Right. But they learn so much more than you standing there trying to teach them this one thing, because they're all interacting with each other and learning a lot.
They have to engage with each other because you've put the
because you can design an answer and put it on the board and hey, presto, it's done. But the power of having 4 people up there with their own way of doing it, just you get that class coming together as a team, pulling the same way, and discovering that there are other ways of thinking, and it's not the teacher doing it.
Right. And in justifying their own view, by arguing, they actually have to engage.
Yes, this was a very argumentative classroom that I had.
Because I saw that happening in your class, Alice, even in kindy, where you were talking about place value, and Alice had 10 paddle pop sticks and groups of 1, and the girls had to select 27. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. And they were arguing about the different. Well, not arguing. They were discussing about the different ways to do this. And you did have some girls counting out, 27, and some getting 30 or 3 groups of 10, and then going, oh,
too many.
Yeah. What do I do now?
That's true. And it's funny when you've got even some influence, outside influence, like a tutor or a person from home that's told them a certain way, and they bring that in. Like I had a girl in kindy whose father sat down with her and told her the algorithm method for addition. And we were just adding 11 to different numbers and talking about that lesson. And she sat down and pulled out the algorithm and started doing it. And unfortunately, because as soon as it got to carrying, she was lost. At first, she was really excited. My dad's method works. And, look at this other way. And I said, that's great. But I was really disappointed that she was using it. And then I thought, I'll just ask a question and see if she can carry. And she couldn't. She got so frustrated because it wasn't working.
Right.
And I said, but could you just think about it in the way that, like we've used in other lessons? And she could do it. But because she really wanted to use her dad's method, it just totally threw her off for the whole lesson.
Right. Yes. In the senior school, we've been talking about the difference between, say, thinking as a practitioner and the tools used to do it. If you understand the tools before you understand what it is you're doing, you soon run into a roadblock, don't you?
Yeah.
You can't solve a particular problem in application.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, can you tell me what you love about mathematics?
I think I just love it because it's, like, to me, it seems quite logical, and I like that there's another step you can work towards once you've covered something, and you can think, what's next? And I think for the girls, it's really rewarding when they could see that they couldn't get something and then they can now, and they get quite excited sometimes by that, and I think that's exciting too as a teacher to see it. And then for me, like playing lots of games with them and working on teamwork skills and being outside and running around, and it's quite practical. So I think just thinking of different creative ways of using all those things in my lessons is quite fun.
Thank you.
I agree with that.
No,
completely, because I think it teaches them a lot. It teaches them to communicate with each other. It teaches them how to solve problems, and it teaches them perseverance. Like then, if they can't do something, keep going, and it's rewarding. Like I said, when you see them to actually get it out, it's
the light bulb moments. I love the toil.
Yeah, right.
I love the toil. Valanto will tell you because she sits right next to me. So if something's bugging me, it'll bug me for days until I work it out. So, and you see those kids toil away, and then when they get it,
the reward.
The reward. But also, we've got to remember that mathematics is everywhere. So wherever you go, you'll see it. Yes. I recently went to Mackay and I saw that swinging pendulum. Took a video of it, and I'm going to show it to my year 12s. Like wherever you go, and if you're not even looking for it, it'll be in front of you. And I always talk about that in the classroom with the girls.
Right.
That even though the toil and the struggle is exciting, and when they get there, they love it. You've got to look elsewhere, because maths comes in so many different shapes and forms, and it's not just in the classroom, and it's not just out of that textbook that they're learning. It's like it's everywhere. I remember going out with Lloyd and doing the sundial, and I don't know, I feel like I'm ignorant sometimes, to the wider knowledge of maths, because I love toiling with a problem and I love getting it out and understanding it deeply. But when I went outside with Lloyd and did the sundial thing, I learned something again. And it's just off the side, and so did the kids. And they see maths in a different light. So I love maths.
It's a way of understanding the world, and the world just keeps going.
That's right. It doesn't end at the end of an activity. So they keep on learning. But those light bulb moments, I think, really do it for the kids. And even the kids that struggle with maths, they get to a point of success. Some form of success. And even they love it when they get to that.
What's amazing to me as I listen to the three of you, the common thread that ran through all those three answers is they were pretty much all pastoral answers. which I just think is amazing. Like I just...
Gives you that buzz.
Right.
Those endorphins just raise.
Resilience or persistence
Yes.
or responding to beauty, all of those things that I think...
There was an article in
Yeah.
the Herald on the weekend about maths and music and how
Yeah, I read
the
that.
musical notes can, it is, it's
Yeah.
a sine curve. There you go. Wasn't looking for maths there.
No. Or poetry.
Yes, I've taken that off
Yeah.
the frame.
But I think to finish, I just want to say how lucky the girls are to be in all three of your classrooms. And I wish I'd sat in all three. Thanks for letting me ask you
Yeah, well,
questions.
my husband had a similar experience too. Hated
Really?
maths because he was told he was just no good at it,
Yeah.
but never really taught it. So
Yeah.
came out with a negative point of view of maths teachers, and then he married one.
Right. Well, if teaching maths is pastoral, the answers you get, then the reverse must also be true. That in classrooms that haven't been designed well, it is completely possible to feel lost, isn't it?
Yes.
So we do have to design for understanding for girls to feel.
And I thought we need to design differently sometimes.
Agreed.
Not every lesson, because in maths we really do need to be at the front teaching them something.
Yeah.
But design it where we can differently, where that communication is encouraged,
Yeah.
and then that gives you the freedom to walk around to find out things like Alice
Right.
mentioned. I thought she knew that, but hey, she didn't.
Yeah.
And if we don't give ourselves a chance to design a lesson where we're facilitators rather than
Right.
at the front,
Right.
we're not going to figure out why this kid's not doing the best they can,
Yeah.
because you can't tap into what their issue is.
Yeah. So perhaps the paradox is, or the point of irony is that sometimes we have to design for moments where we're not in control. Yeah.
And that's scary to a teacher
It's
sometimes.
very scary. Yeah, very scary. Either because your children are 5 years old and might jump out the window, or because they're in extension and might outthink you.
Yeah, or even junior school, they say, well, you're not teaching me. Why not?
Right. And so it's hard to resist that desire, I suppose, for a student for someone else to do their work. But all that does is amplify anxiety and a sense of helplessness.
It's interesting, and also with Year 7 recently with decimals, I didn't teach them division of decimals. I said, I want you to go out there and find something. Teach
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
then they came back the next day and had to show everybody else how to divide by decimals. And it was interesting how they fell back on what they've learnt in Year 6, some of them. They couldn't explain why they were doing what they were doing. It's just a rule I learnt and it works.
Right.
And yeah,
Isn't
so
that
we
interesting?
tease that out.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? How does it work?
Why?
Mm.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had been in all your classrooms. So thank you for talking to me, and thank you. That's all I have to say. Thanks to you. It was good, wasn't it? Yeah.